Hey, I'm Brandon Heath, and you're watching Soundcheck at ONCOURSE Online.
Hey, this is Amber for a special edition of ONCOURSE Soundcheck with a man who needs no introductions, the two-time Male Vocalist of the Year, 5-time Grammy-nominated Artist of the Year, Brandon Heath. How does that feel?
You make me sound really good right now. Can you just go with me everywhere and introduce me that way?
Exactly, I'll do that. I'll have your back.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
You guys are here in Springfield, Missouri with Matt Maher and with your new album out.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this Blue Mountain project that you that you just wrapped up.
We put it out on October the 9th.
Yes.
So, but we wrapped it. It's funny because when you do a record, you do it months and months and months before it comes out. So
yes.
We actually recorded it in April of 2012.
Wow.
And yeah, and then kind of did the finishing touches of it in June.
Yes.
So for me, it's been out for a while, but
yes.
For the general public, which is, you know, probably the most nerve-wracking but exciting part.
Yes.
You know, when you make a record, it's like, you know, you've had a child, and you're gonna send it out into the world and hope that it makes a difference. So
yes.
Yeah.
And your single, Jesus in Disguise, I sing it all. I sing it every time it comes on the radio.
Could you sing it for us right now?
Jesus in... that was probably right.
Well done. I wasn't laughing at your singing, I promise.
That's okay, you can, because I laugh at my own singing. No, but these just great messages of grace and forgiveness and mercy always have wrapped your song. But this album, you really deal a lot with adding character to your music.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that process and why you decided to do it just a little bit different this time.
Well, this is my fourth studio album, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it different, and I think all of us as artists want to feel like we're growing and trying new things. If you're gonna have longevity in your career, you have to reinvent every once in a while.
Yeah.
And so I really went back to the drawing board and tried not to build on what I've done, but really start over a little bit. And you know, you have to keep it commercial, so you can't go crazy with the whole creative license thing. But I wanted to do something thematic. You know, I was having a conversation with a friend in Nashville, and we were talking about envy. And how sometimes, you know, you can envy people, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Blue Mountain people?" And I said, "What do you mean, Smurfs? What do you mean by Blue Mountain people?"
Yes.
And he said, "Well, it comes from C.S. Lewis, and he says that some people are like blue mountains. They're blue and mysterious in the distance, but if you were to get up close to them, they're just brown and green, like everybody else is." And that really struck a chord with me. And so I started thinking, Blue Mountain people, no, what about just Blue Mountain? And so I thought about my childhood trips to the Blue Ridge Mountains in the North Carolina, Tennessee border area, in the Appalachians. And so I thought, oh, it'd be kind of cool to give it this Appalachian sound. And if you want to know a place, you got to write about the people.
Yeah.
So the whole record is based around fictional people who live on Blue Mountain.
Wow. And one of those fictional people that you said it inspired is actually your grandfather.
Yes, and he's not fictional. He's actually a real person. Yeah, I say, as soon as I say fictional, it's like, well, there were a few. I mean, if I'm going to write about rural America, you know, I have to write what I know, and my family, I have some hillbillies in my family. And,
as we all do.
Yeah, we all should,
Yes.
because they bring just a little spice to, I think, our life. But my granddad and my grandmother grew up about an hour and a half outside of Nashville in a little town called Waverly. And Waverly's in the hills.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And my granddad was such a huge role model of mine. Without really trying to be, he just was a good man. I wanted to write a song for him. and Paul Brown Petty is the name of the song, which is his name. He was an average guy, but not average because he made his marriage work, and he worked hard until he was, in his 70s. He was an elder in his church, and I don't know. There's something about him. He'll never be famous or, in history books, but he made a big impact on me, and I have the honor and burden of, making an impact on the world. So if it weren't for him, I wouldn't know how to do that.
I know that you had mentioned that he was very instrumental in shaping your life after your parents' divorce.
Yeah.
And how did that help you through that time in your life?
Well, it was after and during, because I have to give my parents a lot of credit, because when they were going through the divorce, I went to my grandparents' house a lot, just to kind of not see all the bad things going on at home. And I could just be a boy and be innocent. And my last record was called Leaving Eden, and I had to go back to my Eden, and my Eden was the backyard of my grandparents. So it just seems like something that I think about a lot, and not just in a nostalgic way, but in more of a formative way, just looking back on what made me a man, and what made me a compassionate person. And so I think that Paul Brown Petty had a big impact on me.
Wow.
So in a way that if you were to listen to the song, you wouldn't actually know that it's about my granddad until the very end.
Wow. But he does have a name that is worthy of a fiction novel. He does.
Yeah, it's got a good ring to it, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. It is a famous name.
Yeah.
Well, I know one of the songs on the album was inspired by the Bob Goff book, Love Does. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about why specifically you made me pick that book to write a song about.
What's interesting is I wrote it more about him than I did the book, but I used the title. I used the title of the book, and I was kind of hoping that we could tour together a little bit. Bob is.
You never know.
Well, we're working on it, actually.
Wow.
But Bob is an old friend of mine, actually, and he's a mentor of mine.
Wow.
If I've ever had a mentor, it was Bob. I met him when I was 21. And I was working at a camp in British Columbia, Canada, and he got my first record, which was really just like demos that I did in my bathroom. And it's got
pretty awesome demos.
Yeah, I'm sure they're circulating somewhere on the web. But Bob really encouraged me. At the time, I was just a songwriter. He wanted me to come and visit his family in San Diego, and I kept saying, "Why do you want me to visit your family?" But my music was just, I guess, a big part of their family, and so this was in 2004, and I went down 2003, and I visited them for the first time in 2003, and they just kept inviting me to go with them on these crazy trips that they would take. And if you haven't read the book, you need to read the book, Love Does. You'll figure out what I'm talking about. But he's just a different kind of person, but he's so inspiring. And we had a conversation over chips and salsa that first trip. And he said, "How do I help put wings on your dreams, or wheels on your dreams?" And nobody had ever talked to me like that before,
Wow.
and wanted to know about my dreams. And I didn't even, honestly, I felt maybe embarrassed by my dreams, but also I didn't feel permission to acknowledge them. And he gave me that permission, and so he's a big reason why I signed a record deal, and why I do what I do is because he talked me into it. So now he's got this book that talks about his philosophy on life and why he does what he does. I think a lot of people are going to be inspired by it. It's already hit New York Times bestsellers list. I'm so proud of him.
Yes.
But
I have a copy.
You have a copy. Have you read it?
Yes.
Oh, isn't it great?
Yes.
So I highly recommend it. But I wanted to write. He talks about being secretly incredible, which you can't really be secretly incredible and have a book out anymore.
Yeah.
So his secret's out. But anyway, I wrote it about being secretly incredible.
That's awesome. We are all a little bit secretly incredible, but we'd like the world to know that we're secretly incredible.
It is kind of a double standard, isn't it?
It
you
is.
know,
It
it's
is.
yeah. Well, I think it's good, obviously, to be recognized for doing good work, but that can't be your motive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And some people, I mean, we're all bright enough to know who's doing it for what reason. You know what I mean?
It's very
But
there's this old Monty Python sketch. It's the art of not being seen. And for some reason that speaks to me on, you know, because a lot of times we spend our lives trying to be seen. But
Right.
how many times do we spend our lives not being seen?
You mean Monty Python did something meaningful?
Yes.
Kind of like, it's not just slapstick comedy.
Well, it was comedy. People were getting blown up.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well,
the
they're
art of
brilliant, brilliant comedy writers.
But it did speak to me on a theological level, so it's a sign that, you know,
God can use anything.
yeah, God can use anything. Well, tell me a little bit. You're out on tour. You're on this crazy 34 city tour.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're out with Toby.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about where people can find where you're touring at. And
Well, you could always go to my website, brandonheath.net. It's got my whole tour schedule on there, but really the best way to keep up with me is on my Twitter feed.
yes.
I try to tweet at least once a day, and it's hard sometimes when you're on the
know.
road to come up with something kind of interesting to talk about, because it's such a bizarre life to wake up in a parking lot. We're doing this interview right now in one of the venues that I'm playing in, but the first thing that I do is I find where the nearest Starbucks or coffee shop is,
Yeah, that's
because
right
it's
down
like, I know, it's just down the street. So I actually plan my tour around where Starbucks is. Not
that's
really,
great.
but it helps me to get my bearings,
Yes.
you know?
It all helps us to get our
Yeah.
bearings in life. You know.
Some things need to be consistent. So here's my plug for Hampton Inn and Starbucks. Two very consistent companies.
That's awesome.
Consistently good.
One thing that you wouldn't be without on this tour. It can be silly, practical,
What I wouldn't be without.
except Jesus. We know that you wouldn't be without Jesus.
Well, you know, that's the obvious answer. I wouldn't go without my cornhole set. We have
Cornhole.
cornhole set. Yeah, it's the beanbag toss.
Oh wow.
Yeah, have you ever played that game?
No.
We'll have to play after
Yeah,
this.
we'll have to play because
Yeah.
this is intriguing me.
It's one of the
Cornhole.
things that we do during our time while we're waiting for the stage to get set.
Does
and
Matt
everything.
Meyer play cornhole?
He does. He's not very good at it, though.
Okay, well then, you know.
Yeah.
It's an easy one.
Anything I can beat somebody else at is, you know, generally my favorite thing.
That's awesome.
It just helps with the whole, you know, self-esteem thing.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, take care.